Thank you for tuning into Koppen with Comic. I'm Brian Koppen, and we're with comic Carly Montag. Carly Montag, how the hell are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being my first remote recording. I appreciate it.
Such an honor.
And then where can people find you do stand-up comedy normally in New York City, and where are they going to be able to find you in the meantime?
Normally, I run a show every Monday at a bar called Baby Grand in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. But we've just recently had our first virtual Zoom show last week, and we're hoping to do it every Monday. So check us out. Isn't She Funny on Instagram, Facebook, and you can register and get the link for the Zoom.
And so they can see that both live and after the fact by going to Isn't She Funny?
Isn't She Funny? Yep.
And so, yeah, and then you also have a podcast with Emily Walsh.
I do. Emily and I are co-hosts with literally everything. We run our show together, and then we decided to start a podcast together called Alone at Lunch, where we talk with comics or other personalities about just feeling like the weird one out and whatever that means for them. And we've had some good success with some great people so far, and we're looking forward to keeping it going.
And you just kept it going remotely too.
Yes, the power of Zoom.
And then it sounds like we always had the hunch that Carly Montag was an essential worker, and I guess New York agrees. You finally figured out that, man, the great state of New York agrees that Carly Montag is essential.
Finally, I've been waiting for someone to call me essential for my whole life. I do. I'm very fortunate. I work at a hospital, so I guess that's rather essential these days.
Yeah, and so I mean, they're probably taking every precaution. You have people walking around like they're walking on the moon. They got the personal protective equipment.
Absolutely. So we have to wear our masks at all times, and then when we see patients, we put on obviously gloves, and we put on a face shield, and depending on the patient, a gown as well, or sometimes we even double mask depending on the severity of the patient.
Yeah, so initially I think I saw somebody walking through Long Island City, just a normal dude, and he had not only the mask but the shield over it. So it sounds like that's par for the course, at least in hospitals.
Yeah, I've recently heard. Well, I think I knew this before, but it's come back to my attention that this thing can really spread through your eyes, technically.
Oh my gosh.
So my mom just sent me a text the other day that was like, "Please wear glasses or goggles or something." And I was like, as if it's not bad enough.
Yeah, and so and I thank you for doing that, because I have a father who was just in the hospital, and now that he's been discharged, he has a series of professionals coming to his house
Oh,
to
wow.
kind of check up on him. And I think some of them are occupational therapy, but one of them is not wearing a mask.
Oh no, don't let them
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. So they were, there were some strongly worded emails and stuff, and they were like, well, we'll tell him, of course, to wear a mask, but also put a sign outside your door and feel free not to let him in. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, this is the very person who would spread it too, because if you're working with 10 people a day, chances are one person could have it, and then you're going to spread it to your other 9 patients.
Absolutely. That's very unfortunate that that person did that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry on their behalf.
Oh, well, it sounds like you're doing the right thing, and I'm so happy that I'm talking to an essential worker. But
You're
when you're not
welcome.
and when you're not working, it sounds like you are staying busy with just binging everything under the sun. Like I asked you before we got on, are you Netflix or Hulu or Amazon? You're like, yes,
All of
Amazon
it.
and Hulu and Netflix. And so it sounds like you are just all up to date. And even the Chris D'Elia special you recently took down, what was that like?
I don't even think I've seen him before, but I've been watching this show on Hulu called Alone Together, and he has a role in it. And then so
Uh-huh.
once I saw that he had a special, I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And it's very different than the character that he plays on the show,
Oh.
his stage presence. So that was interesting to see. But he's definitely much more of a storyteller than I am in my comedy. So it's always good to see different types. He does a lot of weird voices and funny kind of gimmicks, and so it was good. I mean, I enjoyed it. I don't think I really like laughed out loud, but I was entertained.
And do you laugh at your own jokes like he does?
he does he does do that. That is so funny that you mentioned that, because I picked that up as well, and I think do laugh at my own jokes.
If you can, yeah, wring some extra laughter out of it by laughing at your own joke. I mean, if you have to do it, it's pretty tough up there to get laughs and stuff. You got a couple laughs, you might as well string it out by laughing at your own joke, even if it means you're ridiculous. Like I think he explained why he does it, and he said something like, people talk to me about laughing at my own joke, and to me, it's just so ridiculous that people are paying me to get up there and talk about, an ex-girlfriend mistaking the color of my shirt. And so sometimes he's giggling at the sheer absurdity of it all, that he gets paid to do that.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I turned it off actually, because his first couple specials were great, and then he got on Comedians of the World and just did, I don't know, 15 minutes of an Australian accent, and that was awful too. And like, so the first two were solid. Kind of dipped because he was only doing 15 minutes for this Comedians of the World, but he was up against some of the better comedians in the business, like worldwide.
Right.
He was going up against Mae Martin and some other just amazing comedians. The Mae Martin sitcom on Netflix. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, of course I saw it. Yeah.
Oh, good. We'll have to talk
That
about
was
that
great.
too. Yeah. And so I had hoped that his special after Comedians of the World would be fine, but it's just like, no, I had to turn it off immediately. I think some of these people are, even the Mark Maron one was pretty recent, where I think they're just they're not starting as strong as they used to, because they think they have the goodwill of the audience.
Well, that's what I was actually talking to another comedian, honestly, just like 2 days ago about this. And I'm not really familiar with his earlier work and like the things that helped him to get to where he is today. And I think he's very talented, and I'm not nothing against Crystalia or anybody who's made it in this business. But I was actually just wondering about what what is the it factor that makes somebody get to a point where they do have Netflix specials and they're famous and they're on TV shows. Like, I think it's a lot of talent, a lot of charisma, a lot of who you know, but I was trying to pinpoint like what it was, and I couldn't really figure it out. I mean, he's handsome, he has a good energy about him, so I don't know if maybe that helps as well. But it was just funny that I was trying to figure out like what are the points that it takes to get to that level.
Right, and I think if you looked at the first couple specials, you would realize that yes, because he's a storyteller, it probably relied on the strength of the early stories that he actually polished and that were actually fairly funny. So he probably, not only is he has amazing hustle, and he's a good-looking dude, and but a couple of his stories were actually good at one point.
Now I feel like he has to go out into the world and make things happen so he can tell about them.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. And some of these people, like, they all start having the same stories. Like, even some of the better comics, Eliza and Bill Burr and stuff, and they have the same Sarah McLachlan, ASPCA commercial stories, because they're all on the road and they all see the same stupid commercial in the hotel room. And or even like, the same, they have to go to the gym all the time, so they all have the same joke about the big guy at the gym who, he worked out all his muscles and he has all the muscles, and meanwhile he works at a Verizon store and he doesn't use those muscles at all. And so I think that at some point, even the Eliza one recently was just trash. Like Eliza Schlesinger or whatever her name is. Like, I've loved 4 or 5 of her specials. I mean, they're just quality.
She has so many specials.
Oh, and there's such quality to the point where I think it almost teaches me, a man, about women in general, and it might be the wrong lessons, but it's like, not only is that funny, but I'm kind of learning something about what's going on inside a woman during certain events like dating or whatever. But then the recent one was such trash that it just led me to believe she never worked it ever. Like, she was like, okay, these are my fans, they'll laugh at whatever I say, I don't need to work this material. Yeah.
Well, that's like that French comedian, I'm blanking on his name,
the Gad guy, whatever.
Gad Elmaleh. How he was so famous in France that he was like, I don't even know if jokes work anymore. That he came to America and like started, started I mean, not 100% fresh. I mean, when you're famous, you're not going to start at a open mic level, but he was definitely trying to figure out, make sure he still had that ability to write good jokes and be as good as he is believed to be. So he came to America and like learned a whole new language just
Oh my
to
gosh.
see if his jokes would work.
Well, let it be said, if he can do that, then somebody like Eliza can kind of work her material a little bit more. And that kind of leads me to, it sounds like the recent, I saw the recent Seinfeld special and I was pleasantly surprised, but you couldn't bring yourself to watch it. What's kind of what are your thoughts when you see a new Seinfeld special on Netflix?
I, you know, I have a hard time finding his humor like laugh out loud funny. It's obviously very relatable, and you're like, oh, I thought that too, and you know what I mean, like it. But I don't know. I feel like I guess it takes a special type of person to see things that everybody sees and find a new spin or a new point on it. And obviously, he's
Yeah.
made a huge career on that. And I mean, he's obviously a very very funny and very gifted and talented. But I don't know. I just wasn't ready to see. And what about this, huh? Like I don't know. I just wasn't ready to like let myself be in that mindset.
And
Walk
maybe
across
some
the
of it.
street is funny, right?
And I think that, he doesn't really have, it's all very, I don't know, cerebral. It's all like, it's not too much like somebody like Bill Burr or Kevin Hart can bring a lot of emotion or energy to it. Whereas Seinfeld, it's more like it's all above the shoulders. It was like, oh, I was thinking this and here's my thoughts. And it's like, I relate. It's a cool new way to think about that thing. But I don't really think you care about it that much. Like it just seems like when something has more emotion or more energy, it could be laugh out loud funny. And so is some of that stuff making its way into your act? Like how do you get people to laugh, just belly laughs?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I'm mostly I do very anecdotal jokes. So right now really having to dive into my my personal life and the history of my life, since there's not much going on for me to talk about besides being working. And I haven't really actually I don't really tell jokes about my day job as an essential worker. So maybe I'll have to switch that up. But um yeah, so mostly my jokes are stemming from like things that have happened in my life, my family, dating. I mean, I have the honor of being a gay comedian, or may I say, a comedian who happens to be gay.
Okay.
So I talk a lot about that and how that has played a role in my life, and I think that I try to make it as relatable as possible to obviously people who aren't gay, so that I'm not just like trying to direct my attention to one audience. But I think there's definitely something relatable in just the dynamics of having to figure out who you are and how to your role in life. And I think that's where I found the most success is people being like, oh, that's so crazy that happened to you, because this also happened to me in a weird way. So
And what are some of the I don't know, kind of the life events or transitions in a straight person's life where we might be able to say, oh yeah, it was here where, like Carly Montag, I kind of found something, I had to figure myself out, or I found out who I was.
I think it's anything. I mean, even just basic dating. I mean, I started things off so late in life. I didn't really start dating like until I was in my mid 20s. So
Oh
I
gosh.
think people can kind of relate to that feeling of just like learning how to date for the first time. And I'm coming at it so late in life that people are like, oh wow, like when I did that when I was a teenager, or I don't know, when do people date, when they're 5? I don't know when people date, but how do real people do it? But they can kind of look back on their life and be like, oh yeah, that did happen to me. I never really thought about it because I was young and going through life in a weird time. But now that she's talking about it so much later in life, like I can kind of reflect back on it. Also, just I mean, things like having to tell your parents difficult things. I mean, I mean, for me, it was coming out. But for other people, it might be like if they, I don't know, broke something like or got an accident, or
Yeah.
I mean, it may be very trivial, but just having that dynamic with your parents and trying to be open with them about things and their reaction to things that you do in life, I think is very relatable. I'm trying to think, but yeah,
Yeah,
just like basic dating
those are some
things.
great examples because I would love to, as a straight person, I would love to learn, how to deal with those things, especially because one of the more interesting things about me is that I haven't dated in decades.
There we go.
Yeah, and so how does one actually go out and date if they, haven't, sounds like you waited till you were 22 or whatever, kind of the oh shit, I have to date. What are the steps that you took, and what are some of the steps that you could recommend to people who are new to the market?
Now, is it that you haven't dated because you're like married, or is it
Oh
because
no, no, not at all. No, I used to
okay.
be pretty I think I peaked when I was about 18, and then
Yeah.
my face kind of fucked up to the point where I took myself out of the market. And then by the time I entered the market, it was like I wasn't pulling the same that I used to. Like, back in the day, I was like, the hottest girls in school, but after you let yourself go. It's like I'm not, even if I pulled myself back together, I wouldn't be getting the same kind of person that I used to get. And so I just kind of took myself out for so long. And there's a lot of benefits to doing so because you just don't have to, you can just kind of let yourself go and do whatever the fuck you like. But to people who are, I guess, maybe been in a relationship for a couple of years and they're trying to kind of go out there, what can you recommend? What did the 22-year-old Carly Montag, what did she kind of figure out was the right way to go?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that people have nice personalities too. They don't all have to be good looking. So
I love that.
also, if your standard is an 18-year-old girl, I'm not sure how old you are, but it sounds like you might need to age yourself up a little bit.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It would always be age appropriate, but just like
Yeah. But
if somebody's been in a relationship for a couple of years, what would you recommend going out and doing?
well, I have the problem where I tend to, for lack of a better word, are we allowed to curse on this thing?
Oh, please do.
I tend to shit where I eat by accident. I found that the first person I ever dated was actually a supervisor of mine at my work, and
Wow.
then I've had the pleasure of dating and other comedians. So I tend to just wherever people are nearest to me is where my pool is. So I have a I mean I've been on dates and with people who aren't in my field of work, but I feel like I'm such a weirdo that people have to like get to know me and like a typical sense, and then
Yeah.
I can kind of ease my way into like making it more flirtatious.
And how
um,
how can you do that if you're shitting where you eat?
it's very dangerous, I would say.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful. I definitely have burned some bridges accidentally, but it comes with the territory. I think that you have to just be open to the fact that this is like human nature. I think is to just be having to deal with relationships that come and go and change and shift. And I think if you're just open to that idea that things can change from one minute to the next, and some things are going to go badly and some things are going to go really, really great, that if you just have that open mindset of just kind of like letting things take the course that they seem to be playing out, it seems like it's a pretty good route, or at least it has been for me. And I will say that I definitely sometimes walk down the street with a little caution in my step, just not really sure who I'm going to run into that day. But keeps things more exciting. Why not? It's
Yeah,
boring
I
to
think
be hidden away.
I think that's a pretty healthy outlook, and I thank you. And that's why I asked these things because my outlook is so unhealthy on these things. And so it sounds like Carly Montag shits where she eats, and she's alone at lunch with Emily Walsh. But she's also isn't she funny? And they can check these Zoom comedy shows every Monday.
Every Monday, yes. Just follow us and register on Eventbrite so we can send you the link to the Zoom so that we don't get uh, Zoom attacked
Zoom.
by.
I love that, and I mean, of course, a comedian like Carly Montag could make a Zoom attack funny.
I try.
But Carly Montag, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.